If you were to take a look at the kill rate stats on the community-powered website Nightlight, you would find that Slinger is at the very bottom, if not consistently among the bottom 5. The screenshot I'm showing you now is one that I took in mid-July, where Slinger sits behind Clown and Ghostface at a measly 39% kill rate overall. And that sounds pretty pitiful, but even if we scroll up to the top kill rates, we'll see that the highest kill rate tops out at around the 56% mark, with well over half the roster sitting at 50% or below. On average, killers are reported to have a 48% kill rate, and a lot of other killers will probably point out how this statistic is due to whatever number of reasons that is currently impacting the killer role as a whole. Personally, I'm not going to divest too much energy into talking about the current state of the killer role, and want to instead talk about Nightlight's numbers and stats themselves and why this shouldn't be a cause for immediate panic. Earlier this year, Behavior's official numbers show that the highest kill rates were in the low 60% range, which is a few points off of what Nightlight has to report. The main reason for these discrepancies is that Nightlight is subject to sampling bias. It is a website that specifically records results from PC players that are aware of the website's existence, can read the languages that the website supports, and are patient enough to record their own stats through the desktop app. Furthermore, the app can only retrieve stats from players that complete their games, meaning that if a survivor leaves a game before the killer's build is revealed, then Nightlight won't capture the game for its stats. There is an option to capture the scoreboard before the killer is revealed, but if the kill stats and killer perks are yet to be recorded, then you have to go to your DBD stats website, manually input everything from there afterwards into Nightlight, which, frankly, very few people have the patience for. So therefore, the survivors that are submitting their games to Nightlight are most likely the ones that get to the end match screen, which is more likely if they escape the trial, meaning that killer stats look lower on Nightlight because matches where the survivor escapes at the end of the game have a higher chance of being submitted, and even higher still if those survivors are playing in a Swift group. That, of course, doesn't consider the killer players that submit their stats, but killer players have always been outnumbered by survivors historically, and so their stats are less likely to have representation in any format. So if we consider these likelihoods and the very narrow selection of players that submit these stats to the website, Nightlight's stats on kill rates are naturally a handful of points lower than what we know from Behavior's official stats. But that being said, some of the killers that are among the higher kill rates on Nightlight are pretty similar to the highest kill rates in Behavior's stats, so we can therefore be led to assume that Nightlight, despite its sampling bias, can be interpreted as being about 8 to 10% below official stats. Even so, that raises Slinger's kill rate to scarcely below 50% at best, and heck, even I can only maintain a 60% kill rate myself, and I'm only okay at the character. That's not modesty either. I make a lot of stupid mistakes while playing the Slinger that players that are better than me have cut out of their habits. So one of the reasons why this kill rate is so low and why Slinger feels so weak is because you have to actually be good at Slinger in order to get good results. By that I mean that so many other killers have powers that are significantly less precise and punishing, while they yield equal or greater results. Let's take the Nightmare, one of the highest kill rate killers in Behaviors and Nightlight stats, as an example. When Freddy is charging his Dream Snare, he moves at Survivor run speeds and immediately regains full movement speed after using the power. If the snare lands successfully, he gets a massive slow on sleeping targets, and the power then passively regenerates over 7 seconds while he maintains the same movement speed. If he misses the M2, sure that sucks, but it's largely inconsequential because he can stay in chases anyway. For the Slinger, you slow down when you aim, your movement speed as the shot is traveling out and back is the same speed as the movement speed you have while performing the weapon wipe animation, you exchange the use of your power for a 2.7 second stun or weapon wipe animation, and you have to actively take 2.6 seconds to reload, which also slows you down. And that's not to mention that if you miss, DBD locks the Slinger out of any action aside from slowly strafing for 1.5 seconds. This is consistent with every other projectile killer cooldown, but the difference being that he's also slowed down for the 1.5 seconds, while killers like the Slasher or even the animatronic have increased movement capabilities after missing their projectiles. Additionally, every other killer with some form of ranged projectile has a secondary component to their power. The Unknown can teleport, Jason can speed walk while invisible, Springtrap has the doors and becomes 115 when his power isn't available, Pyramid Head has his trails and cages, and even the Huntress has 7 shots before she has to reload. Slinger, on the other hand, is his one shot in his rifle, and without it he's technically weaker than the Trapper. And since the survivor role is also in a much stronger state than before, and since survivors are getting better at the game over time, it is simply not enough for a Deathslinger player to use the Redeemer to its lowest potential.
Oh, it's the Slinger. Okay, nice. I need to leave because if I go, maybe I just take this hit and go the other way. Because if I go that way, I'm just like, it's just bad for the person on the hook. So I'm gonna go check. I think I make check, right? Yeah, he's reloading now, so I probably make. Ah! I don't claim this one. I feel like this game is also pretty chill. Where are the full totem tunneling Jasons? What is going on? I mean, not that I want them. Actually, maybe I should just, like, stay quiet. Maybe I shouldn't ask this. Maybe I'm just jinxing myself. Your next match is gonna be a full slowdown blight. Oh, fuck. Shit. Oof. Nice. Oh, is that? It is. I'm down for a blight match, actually. Okay, I'm taking the M1 and getting out of here. Oh, how did it miss? Oh, I'm sorry. The TTS doesn't know how to say it. Is he coming here? I feel like he's coming here, right? He is. Okay. He's going back to the hook, I think, so I can open this gate. They should probably open the gate closer to her before unhooking, though. I don't know what to do here because they haven't even started the other gate. Oh, then they just save. Okay, I'm just opening. Then yeah, it's just opening. Hopefully they run here. Hopefully they run straight here. They are. Okay, this is fine. This is perfect. Where is Delara though? Delara is kind of fucked. Does this Slinger know the red forest check sauce? I don't think he does. Damn, I don't think Delara gets out here. Unfortunately. Wait, maybe she does. If you can body block for her. Because I think she's on check. But I don't think I make it in time. Shit. She needs to run straight there. She needs to run straight there. Nice, 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 nice. Nice, nice, nice. Okay, we're all out. Nice. Good body block, thank you, thank you. Tough game for the Slinger, but you gotta learn some of the tech to make him really work. I feel like you can divide the Slinger player base into two, and he was on the side that's not actually trying to improve his gameplay. He's just like M2 holding, and most of the times it works, so that's why he just keeps playing like that. But
if you do want help with the Deathslinger though, I have a big guide on all the basics, and then this more recent video where I talk about more how to utilize DBD's hitboxes. But as we saw in Nina's VOD though, there are Deathslinger players that are unaware of his potential, and are so scared of taking the 7-second penalty for missing that they become more predictable and less deadly as a result. If your entire game plan revolves around only walking around and faking M2, then you are just a 4.4 killer with no power. Deathslinger's strength is in the chase, but being consistent with it requires a greater level of precision than every other killer, and the drawback is comparatively much more punishing as well. When the Deathslinger player is good though, he is so oppressive and unfun to play against. The number of people that have practiced this killer and completely understood his precision is relatively low, but they are the examples that the wider player base should pull from. So that all being said, it is my current opinion that Deathslinger's low kill rate is partially due to the fact that he has a lot of unexpected nuance to his power that has literally zero fallbacks. I used to maintain the opinion that Deathslinger should be 115 to make up for his sluggishness around the map, but now that I've grown wiser, that change is merely a band-aid fix which would only serve to make Deathslinger easier to play and chase. And he'd be more annoying to face because of it. I believe that most people who say that making him 115 would fix his pacing issues generally don't try to use this killer's power for anything but animation locks. Of course, you're going to have a terrible kill rate if all you do is shoot people when they drop pallets or vault windows, but that's just playing an M1 killer with extra steps. But the other reason why Deathslinger's kill rate is so low is because maps have become increasingly more hostile for him. First, it was the random introduction of hitboxes that you sometimes can't shoot through, like this wagon on Dead Dog Saloon now for some reason, and you can't shoot under it either. Then shots like this on Blood Lodge exist, so I don't know what the hell is going on there. And after the hitboxes, it was the pallet density changes. My initial thoughts were, yeah, okay, whatever, Deathslinger gets more guaranteed injuries over survivors locking themselves into pallet dropping animations, but we already touched on that as an inferior strategy. The real culprit here is how the increase in pallet counts brought about an increase in obstacles that block lines of sight on outdoor maps, and an especially high number of those that can't be shot over, under, or through. Take the Disturbed Ward map, for example, where the pallet density change made filler tiles appear every few meters, it feels like. Most of them also have these tall rocks, which Slinger can't shoot over, and are easy for survivors to abuse 110 killers on. Those fillers don't include guaranteed tiles like this hedge tile that's always guaranteed to spawn next to the main building. Also, you can't shoot through this foliage, but you can shoot through something similar on the Yamaoka maps. The weirdest detriment that came from this change, though, was on the Macmillan maps, where the second revision to the pallet density made it so that the trees were less spread out from the rocks on all the filler tiles. In doing so, the trees and rocks are now fused together, and there's no gap for Deathslinger to shoot through here at all. The one counterplay you had against this kind of tile doesn't exist anymore. Pallets and animation locks forever. So even if you don't want to only catch survivors on pallet drops or window vaults, the Deathslinger is resigned to it, more often than he was before anyway. Then there's the maps themselves and the lopsided realm prevention system. Deathslinger tends to have a harder time on more spread out maps with long open lines of sight, or maps that have poor lines of sight. A number of months ago, the Deathslinger community voted, by popularity, the Larry's Memorial Institute as his worst map overall, which makes sense given how the map plays out. The other indoor maps are generally unfavorable, though there is some fun to be had on the game and RPD at least. Personally, I find that Mount Orem Resort, Nostromo Wreckage, and Midwich Elementary School are some of my weakest maps. They might have some fun and favorable angles and loops to work with, and the time that it takes to traverse to a generator is often insurmountable though, and all three of those maps are very easy to pre-run or self on. If I don't force a 3-gen setup, these maps and other ones like them become exceedingly difficult to play on. My worst map by far, though, is Trickster's Delusion. It's a large map, it has very clear but blocked lines of sight that enable pre-running, it has uncounterable innumerable pallets, it has broken hitboxes, and half of it plays indoors, so lining up shots is exceedingly difficult. But aside from the thematic commonalities, all these aforementioned maps share the fact that they are often the only one or one of two in their respective realms. Therefore, the Realm Prevention system makes it more likely for players to see these unfavorable maps. To prove my point, I have been collecting data on every game of Survivor and Killer that I have played since February of this year. In 434 games, I have played on RPD 25 times, Toba Landing 21, Hawkins 19, and then Nostromo Wreckage, Batum Preschool, and the Gideon Meat Plant 18 times each. In other words, 119 of my games have been played on the same 6 maps, with Midwich taking that 7th place spot with 16 appearances. All of these maps are either the only map in their realm, or one of the only 2, and a lot of them are generally unfavorable for killers as a whole, if not specifically bad for Deathslinger. Also, I know that I haven't split Survivor and Killer side here because I just didn't really think of doing it that way, but I think that if I get a map that favors the Survivor side, then the Killer on the other side of the game is also suffering just as much as I would be. So if you feel like Deathslinger's on the weaker side presently, it's because his kit has become less favorable and more demanding of the Deathslinger player as the game changes its base formula. Slinger is also a pretty one-track killer. If he can't do his one thing well, or at least at a generally more accessible level, he's going to suffer for it, as well as his kill rate. And if there was one quick change that I would make to Slinger to make him slightly less sluggish, I would make it so that hooking a survivor instantly reloads the Redeemer. Any amount of time saved would go a long way, and it would encourage Deathslinger players to slug less. Aside from that, that is why the Deathslinger feels weak right now. Probably. If you liked the video, feel free to like the video. If you disliked it, I have a Sweaty Swift and a Ghoul main with 4 slowdown perks on speed dial. If you want to see your fan art at the end here, feel free to ping me on my Blue Sky or in my Discord server. Thanks again to my wonderful Ko-Fi supporters, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye-bye.